guess this is part 2 continuation of the first part of the video, some camera difficulties. The battery on there only lasts so long, so more space for footage on the camera. So I'm going to try to remember where I got chopped off before. I think I was mentioning that as much as y'all might have been mad at me or disgusted for, in a sense, me abandoning you, even if you didn't really process that as such as a young person, just subconsciously your awareness of that a person leaving you and going somewhere is like a form of abandonment, and then you begin to get disgusted with me for the person I was becoming and what I was mentioning as I picked up cigarettes and alcohols and parties as my mask to somehow escape, but also cope with the fact that I didn't feel like I measured up to what you guys, the great good things you guys represented in childhood and all your talents, that I didn't quite feel like I measured up, so I wore those masks. And then there's the elements, which is, I don't like to talk about this, but it's kind of like a pink elephant in the living room. So, it's a variable of this equation, so I'm going to mention it. It was the monetary, luck and fortune of that my father got, and how that created a shift in my life, where I literally went from poverty to a different reality where there was an immense amount of wealth, yet with my misguidance of being an immature kid, wore that mask of wealth and actually became, in a measure of value systems, much poorer than I was as a person, monetarily poor. My values became worse because I immaturely wore that mask of money along with the mask of cigarettes and alcohol and drugs and partying to feel somehow like I measured up or feel better about the road I was on. I also wore the mask of money and the many layers to that, and even maybe my own subconscious or subliminal desires from my own anger about not measuring up in childhood to my peers and friends. Maybe it was like an aversion slapping y'all in the face with my money as I immaturely wore that mask, and being conceited about money, in a crazy wardrobe of different outfits and clothes that was like pushing the money in your face for maybe my own subconscious anger that I had, or jealousy that I didn't measure up to you guys, and that was my way of equalizing that equation to somehow feel like I was better or measured up. And then now your anger could then become, if you weren't aware of it then, maybe subconsciously this was what was a process that was evolving. You're now angry at me for abandoning you. You're angry at and disgusted at the person I'm becoming, and now you're irritated. Maybe not jealous, but just irritated at how disgusting I'm wearing the mask of money. And just all the layers to all of this, and how we became estranged, and then just further estranged as time went on, as we just became completely different people. And I guess the moral of the story, the piece that I want you to have, if measuring success is in maybe your situations, the tangible accomplishments of going through school and then becoming lawyers and successful accountants, and maybe I measure up and I've gone through school, I've gotten a master's degree in mental health counseling, I've gone to college, got my bachelor's degree, I've done some meaningful things with music, I have tangible accomplishments, but maybe the piece you can have is knowing that as ugly as I became, I finally evolved through all these long roads, misguided, some roads with guidance, that I became a better person and returned to that innocence that I had as a children, and that good, that blueprint that represented goodness that I had as a kid and then lost, that I came back around in that long crazy map, that obstacle course. I became that good person again. and that my measure of success, aside from a measure being measuring tangible accomplishments, that I now have an understanding of all the layers and dynamics that have gone on that could have made it where we're estranged, and that I'm no longer in that picture, have a place in that picture with you guys, that I own a part to that. I'm responsible for that because of the way I evolved and matured and how immature I was during those times. And so I own up to that, and I want you to know and have peace. And my peace begins you understanding me a little bit better. And then another thing, in addition to these circumstantial things that I created, or circumstantial things that I existed, such as a transition from poverty into wealth, and then how I adapted to that new role, I also, you may not be aware, or you are aware if you follow my YouTube page, I have a mental illness. So in addition to circumstantial depressions, I also have a chemical imbalance in my brain. So forgive me for some of my poor behaviors in childhood, where maybe I had anger management problems, and we might have physically fought. Maybe I hit you or something, and your anger about that, and just how maladjusted I was as a child. Forgive me for it took me longer to evolve as a person, to learn the values that I have now, that, you know, for every action is a consequence, and knowing that value and that lesson, that I've become a less reactive person, that I'm a much calmer human being now, and that through this long road, and while at times I've had many regrets, I actually finally have peace, knowing I've learned so many lessons and evolved to a point where I'm no longer making the same mistakes.